Hello and welcome to Vuelogs crosscheck podcast. Today in the 13th episode, a YouTuber that I've been looking forward to having on the podcast for a very long time now. Also from Australia and maybe also known as the other Paul. Here's Paul Stewart.
Hello, my name is Paul Stewart and I'm standing next to a very large bridge.
Dubbed by Jeb Brooks as YouTube's funniest trip reporter, Paul has been posting hit after hit on his channel, casually getting over tens or even hundreds of thousands of views. And today, he's joining us for Vuelogs crosscheck podcast. Paul Stewart. Hello, Paul, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Robin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. It's been a long time coming. I've had a bit of a hiatus with the podcast, so I'm very glad to have you finally here on the podcast today. For you, it's Saturday. For me, it's Friday. How's your weekend?
So just started. I just got out of bed and walked into my living room, moved my table around, and now I'm here. So it's exciting as most of my Saturdays are.
Because it's a familiar background for people who also watch Jeb Brooks and or Dennis Bunnick, with whom you had a video recently. What did you do?
Yeah, so I just thought I'd sit in front of my bookshelf. So I've got some airplanes that I figured were probably relevant, and then some books as well to make me look intellectual and intelligent, even though I've never read any of them. And oh yeah, just make sure none of them are embarrassing or anything. But yeah, there. I'm not actually. You can't really see them. Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah. Well, some books on politics, which I've been told I'm not allowed to talk about.
I mean, we can, but I think it'll destroy the comment section, and I'd like to keep my channel non-political. I think there's a lot of channels on YouTube that are great for politics. Mine is none of them. I wanted to ask you, Paul, because I have, of course, recorded a podcast with Dennis a couple months ago. You're going into summer now with in Australia. How is the situation with COVID?
So initially things were reasonably calm, and then there was quite a large outbreak in Victoria, Melbourne in particular. So Melbourne has been in lockdown for quite a few months, which has been really difficult for them. They've had sort of quite prolonged curfews and things like that. I think it sounded pretty horrific at the time, but it appears to be working. So things are starting to open up again. They haven't announced when the borders are going to be open, because they've actually just closed all the borders with Victoria. But I think that'll be probably happening soon. Where I am in New South Wales, the borders they're about to open up with Queensland and Tasmania, because we had a small spread, but much smaller in comparison to what the rest of the world has experienced. So I think things domestically are probably looking up. International travel, I think, wouldn't potentially not be happening for a long time. It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen. You've got sort of politicians and public commentators who are saying that we'll have a vaccine soon, the borders will be open and things will be back to normal by next year. I think the fact that like airlines like Qantas is saying the A380s are going to be retired, not retired, but sort of locked up until 2023. I think they're probably more realistic when it comes to proper travel restarting again. Even getting a vaccine for this particular type of virus is quite difficult. People that I've spoken to that sort of work in that kind of area, infectious diseases and things like that, they're far less optimistic than sort of politicians are. So there's often like talk of trials are advancing, phase 2, phase 3 trials and things like that. So hopefully we'll have something soon. But I think I'm more cautiously optimistic than I think a lot of other people are, or cautiously pessimistic potentially. So I think the plan for Australia is we'll try, and the international borders are probably going to be closed for a year or two, with potentially the exception of somewhere like New Zealand. But I think the plan is to try and have just a lot of domestic travel. So in the last few days, I booked flights to Adelaide, to South America, to Northern Territory, and Tasmania as well, for trips later this year and next year. So, but unfortunately, international travel won't be happening for a while, I don't think, from Australia.
Well, the advantage is that Australia is a very huge country, so you can fly long distances whilst not even leaving the country.
True, but it's in a little 737, which isn't too exciting. You're right. Australia's very large. There's just it's all very there's like a green strip along the side, and then desert, and then a desert for thousands of kilometers, and then a green dot, and then the Indian Ocean. So and Adelaide and Dennis are in the middle somewhere.
Exactly.
So yeah, but it'd actually be nice to see the country. I've explored more of the world than Australia. I've never been to the Northern Territory. I've barely been to Tasmania. So it'd be interesting to actually be to those, to visit those places and see what they're like.
Yeah, because I find it interesting. Australia has had a fairly unique way of combating the virus by basically just closing off interstate travel. How is that? Like, suddenly, like, it's very different than states in well, the United States, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's complicated, but I mean, the reality is it's kind of worked. Well, I guess if you're looking at purely from a numbers perspective, well, I guess a death count essentially is the main number. I guess from that perspective, it's actually much lower than the rest of the world. Obviously, then to contrast that with, I guess, the economic and social damage done because of this, and I guess that's far more difficult to actually measure. And again, I think a lot of the damage we won't really have known the damage for a while yet. In Australia, like a lot of money has gone into welfare, and sort of the government are propping up a lot of jobs, with some job seeker payments and things like that. And also initially, I think there was a lot of togetherness, a lot of everyone sort of working together to fight this virus. We're suffering now, but in the future, it's all for the common good. And in the future, things will go back to normal. I think people are starting to get sick of that, particularly those people in Melbourne. I mean, to be honest, where I am now in Wollongong, just below Sydney, it's life is fairly much normal. I had a work function last night. We had to scan a QR code on our phone and take some precautions, but generally speaking, life is just completely normal. We have no spread here. There's a small amount of spread in Sydney, but otherwise things are reasonably normal. So it's difficult. Like, there's certainly a lot of economic issues, a lot of I guess people want to travel overseas, but they're being told they're not allowed to. But I guess if you contrast us with what's happening in the US, then I mean, they're also going to have economic issues and a lot of people dying and being unwell. And I guess we don't know the long-term effects of this virus as well. Even if you survive, then I guess there's sort of concerns about ongoing syndromes, which are all very vague. And again, we may not know about these things for quite a few years. So yeah, I think by closing down the borders, obviously that's caused problems, but it sort of has enabled us to control the virus. I guess the question is where to go forward. I mean, are we just going to stay closed until we get a vaccine? And if we don't get a vaccine, do we just wait for the virus just to sort of become a lot less severe? So I guess that's the issue. I think people are hoping there's going to be a vaccine and then we can just open up and go back to normal, but I'm not sure if that will happen.
The key is probably, in my opinion, rapid testing. I recently got the chance to travel out of country from here in Canada to go visit my family in Holland. And on my way back, I had to do the 2-week quarantine, which is mandated federally, which is all fine. It was all very well organized. They checked up on you. They called you. They sent emails. Very well organized. And then literally like 2 or 3 weeks later, after I was done with my quarantine, they finally announced this new pilot program right here in the province, which allows you to do a test on arrival. Then you have to stay in quarantine until the result of the test returns. And if it's negative, you are allowed to go out. You still have to wear a mask everywhere. And then you have to do another test a week later. I think that is pretty much the only thing you can do, testing.
I mean, the issue is, though, you're relying on people to be honest. So like this whole outbreak in Victoria, which caused everything to become a disaster and this city of 3 million people to go into lockdown, was caused by one person. So they were in hotel quarantine. There was a security guard. They did some mischievous behaviors, and then it's done. So this is the issue. You can't trust people, and there's been other instances whereby people have snuck across borders, and I'm not sure if they were infected or what happened. But so I mean, what you say makes sense, but the problem is you only need one person to start a pandemic, and so that's the problem. That's why Australia has been reasonably harsh with just we're not trusting people to do home detention. We're locking you up either in a hotel with police there and no longer security guards, or like the most recent flights, they're taking them to, I think, a detention center up in the Northern Territory, and they've got to sit behind barbed wire for 2 weeks, which I think that they're people are happy to do because they're desperate to come home. But it'll work though. That's the thing. I mean, everything is risk versus benefits. But I don't trust 100% of people to follow the rules and stay at home. So that's the problem with sort of opening things up. And I'm sure this will happen in Canada. There will be people that will not follow the rules. And you only need one. That's the thing.
And you are right, because like the day after I came out of quarantine, and I just remembered that now you're saying it, the day after I came out of my 2-week quarantine, I was happy to go out, and I had to go somewhere where I had to sit in a waiting area. But to go in there, they did ask me the questions of whether I had a cough or a fever, whether I had been in contact with anyone with COVID, and whether I had been out of Canada in the past 14 days, which I obviously could say no to because that was 15 days earlier. And while waiting in the waiting area, there was someone who actually responded yes to that question because they had come out of the US a couple days earlier. So you're totally right. Even though you have all these checkups, there's always going to be people who aren't trusted to do their confinement. And I know some people who are currently in a hotel in Australia doing their 14 days, which I find a very interesting thing. How that, like, you have to lock yourself up in a hotel room for 14 days. But then I see other friends of mine in Sydney who go out to bars and not wearing masks. I find it such a contrast you have in Australia.
Well, I guess because we're hard aligned with the people coming home, we're able to not wear masks out in public. So I guess that's a thing. It's and I think having reasonably strict borders is, I mean, again, it works. I mean, it just, irrespective of this whole Melbourne thing, bit of a screw up down there, then this system actually does work. And again, you contrast us to the European countries now, I think the UK and France and things like that are going back down into lockdown while we're sort of returning much more to normal. And again, New Zealand was sort of similar in that they were like harsh, locked down, stay at home, do nothing. But it's kind of worked though. So it's sort of, it depends, I guess, on the specific governments I guess we'll see what happens. But I think most Australians would support well, it's hard to say. I think they support the reasonably harsh rules when you're coming back into the country. I think it might be less certain about sort of moving interstate and leaving the country, but certainly coming back, I think most people think it's reasonable. And even so, we've just sort of kind of opened up a sort of a one-way bubble with New Zealand. So the Kiwis are allowed to come to, I think, about 2 Australian states, and a whole lot immediately got on a plane at Sydney and then flew down to Melbourne where they weren't allowed. So this is the issue. You have people that either A, knowingly break the rules and are naughty people, or B, people that just don't know, people that make mistakes, people that don't, they probably should do more research, but they don't. We all make mistakes. So again, this is, you can't trust people.
Yeah.
The government knows this. This is why they're doing the hotel quarantine thing and not home quarantine.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, because obviously it's expensive, but it's working.
One advantage really to not being able to travel out of country is, especially what we talked about with Dennis as well, is traveling within the country. Have you got any trips booked within Australia?
Yeah, so just in the last week, I've booked going to Tasmania. I haven't explored there properly. I hear it's nice. Going to, where else am I going to? So Northern Territory, which I've never been to. I've flown over Darwin and seen it from 40,000 feet, but I've never actually been there. And Adelaide briefly as well. So I plan to catch the GAN train It's like a famous train that goes right up through the center of the country. So I'm doing that in February is the plan. So that'd be good. But I want to go out to Longreach, want to go out to the Qantas Museum. I mean, this, as you can tell by my merchandise and the model behind me, I'm obviously a Qantas nerd. And this year was meant to be celebrating 100 years. With many events were organized. Obviously, it's just an absolute disaster. So I'm hoping to go out to Longreach and do some filming and things like that out at the museum there as well. And also at my local, the Haas Aviation Museum, just 20 kilometers that way. They've got a retired Qantas 747-400 there. So I'm hoping to do some videos and things there as well. So that's kind of short-term travel. But yeah, definitely I think I'll be doing more travel. But once the border opens up with New Zealand, which will hopefully be sometime next year, if they can trust us, then I'm sure I'll be over there pretty quickly anyway. I mean, I tend to go to New Zealand quite regularly. It's like the Australasian version of the Alps that you guys have in Europe. It's just incredibly stunning scenery, as well as it's a very, very safe, clean place to visit. Everyone's very friendly. Hopeless at cricket and rugby, but that's not their fault. They can't have everything. But yeah, it's always nice to visit there. So trips to New Zealand kind of count as domestic, but yeah, I mean, I was due to go to the United States last month, and South America back in March. In fact, I could have, within weeks, I could have been one of those Australians stuck in Peru when the borders closed there, because I was meant to go to Peru. So that could have been very disastrous. So obviously it's disappointing that trip was cancelled. But I'm also grateful that I didn't go a few weeks earlier, because I would have been stuck there, and that could have caused a whole lot of problems.
Are most of the trips you're taking more for holidays, or more specifically for making footage for the channel, or are they work related?
Almost not. Oh yeah, not many work related. I did go to a conference last year in the UK, via Helsinki and Hong Kong, but otherwise most of it is just for fun. I enjoy travel, but certainly a lot of the travel has something to do with the specific aircraft types and things like that I can visit. So I enjoy history. I like politics. So going all through sort of Europe, all the ancient history, all the Athens, Rome, all those things. I was in Turkey last year. So that was really, really interesting place to visit, all that sort of Roman stuff. But also some of the travel is also quite dependent on where I can get flights. Most of my first class flights are all with frequent flyer points, which means that you've got to sort of fly when the airline will fly you. Mm-hmm. So that probably has a lot to do with where I'm visiting as well. And also like tricks, as I'm sure you're aware, certainly if you fly from certain destinations in Europe, the flights are much cheaper. So I flew Lufthansa back from Europe last year, and by starting the trip in Turkey, all the flights were over $1,500 Australian dollars less by starting in Turkey instead of starting in Frankfurt itself. So that's a reason to visit Turkey, I guess.
Oh yeah, I've done it myself before, by taking a flight from Brussels to Amsterdam and then flying on to the States, because it would be a couple €100 cheaper than flying straight from Amsterdam to the States. It is crazy, because you have an extra leg and an extra video. Exactly. And you're paying less. So and that's one of the things, like with all the podcast stuff I've been making so far, like most of us enjoy taking extra legs, weird routes. By the way, Paul, I almost forgot, but it's the 31st of October today. Today is your channel birthday.
Happy birthday to it.
Yeah.
I don't know how old it is.
31st of October, 2013. That's 7 years on YouTube today. Although your oldest video is like 5 years old, but...
No, it's just I deleted my old rubbish one. How terrible and embarrassing.
Just going over some numbers of you recently reached 10 million views, which is absolutely crazy, and you keep posting hit after hit. I said this in the introduction video. You have 31 videos on your channel with more than 100,000 views, of which your most watched video is the Cathay Business Class video with 820,000. Malaysia First Class with 630,000. Qantas First Class, 630,000. Why do you only have 46,000 subscribers, Paul?
I'm doing something wrong, clearly. Yeah, I'm not sure. But no, I mean, as I'm certainly flattered to have as many as I do. Considering this is just a hobby. I've sort of just stumbled into this. I never really planned to do anything. And like some of the videos from like 5-6 years ago are horrendous. Like it'd be 15 minutes. It'd just be like a still photo of a plane looking through a airport window. And then my seat, just still photos. And then 7 minutes sort of taking off out the window. It was like half out the window, half of my leg, half of the window. And then just some still photos of 3 different meals. And then 7 minutes of landing in somewhere. Again, mostly footage of my leg and this windowsill. And then that was it. And then people watch that stuff and thought, oh, maybe I'll keep making this type of thing. And then make it slightly better. And I think I've got a bit better than those previous videos. So I've since deleted most of those old ones. So I think my oldest video is of takeoff on a Qantas 767, which is that aircraft's now been retired. So I wish I had made a proper video of that because that's obviously a significant aircraft. But again, most of it was just terrible footage. As the cameras all over the place. I don't know why I have a peg in my hand. I like to fiddle with things.
But it's odd though, because a lot of those videos that got a lot of views were posted around the time of 2016, 2017. I think a lot has changed, that the type of viewer has changed a lot. We get a lot more used to quality content. So do you think footage like that would work in 2020?
No. I think... And I've also had this discussion with a few YouTubers. I think now that with whatever the way that YouTube's analytics work, if you release a video, it either goes massive straight away or it's a total disaster. So
that's me every video.
Well, my most recent one was a disaster. But yeah, it's like 2 videos ago, I was on the final Qantas 747 flight with Dennis. That's a bit over 200,000 views, which for me is incredible. But then my most recent one was sort of it's I think about 4,000 views in a week. So it's all, I mean, obviously the 747 is a lot of nostalgia associated with that, as opposed to a de Havilland Canada, actually. Dash 8 Q400 going from Sydney to Port Macquarie. No one seemed to care, obviously. But otherwise, then yeah, it's just exactly like in the past you could upload utter tripe, and people would watch it. You get hundreds of thousands of views. Again, like my videos that I've deleted, they actually had a decent number of views, but they were objectively terrible. But now I think the expectation is much higher. I mean, I think just YouTube has changed. But people, including myself, watch YouTube like they used to watch TV. My TV is not connected to the free-to-air TV or whatever it's called, the mainstream media stations. I don't watch any of them. I've got Amazon Prime, Netflix, YouTube, and our Australian ABC, the national broadcaster. That's all I watch, really. So I think people are now watching them as like travel shows, documentaries, and things like that. Because another thing, I was always very cautious about making the videos too long. Like limit to sort of like 10 or so minutes, 15 minutes, that's getting a bit long. But there's aviation vlogs and stuff that are 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and they're getting hundreds of thousands of views. So I think people really are treating it as TV. And I guess that's the whole uniqueness of what we're doing. We're just plane nerds enjoying our interest of aeroplanes and travel. And we're usually somewhat more reliable when, as opposed to like millennials generally are very cynical about everything. What you see on TV, you just don't know if it's true or not. Like a lot of that sort of those travel programs A lot of them, it's just there's obviously the people making the videos are getting kickbacks, as opposed to us where we're just a nerd flying somewhere. I mean, the reality is that they're with some of the big YouTubers, obviously they are getting kickbacks from airlines and things like that, and then that I guess raises some ethical issues. But otherwise, the rest of us who are just doing this for fun, then we're showing you what it's actually like. It's not photoshopped. It's genuinely what you're going to get if you pay a certain amount of money or points. So
because I have you heard I've heard you say a couple times in your videos that you're absolutely not being paid to spread your opinion, and everything's very like you've been very upfront about that. Did you get criticism about that?
I think that there's a few people have commented in videos, but also just even friends. So now like work colleagues are finding out what I'm doing. So they're just asking like, am I being paid or whatever? Which, I mean, irritation is a strong word, but it's slightly frustrating when I'm spending so much money, which I should be putting into a house, or points or effort like playing the points game, which takes a long time to do it well. To then have people go, you're getting these tickets for free. And like, no, I'm not. I'm making sacrifices. I'm working after hours, overtime. I'm working weekends to pay for all this type of stuff. So no, I'm definitely not. So yeah, I've always wondered what I've never had an airline approach me anyway. But I've always wondered what I would do. But I wouldn't. I think I would feel uncomfortable doing it. Getting a free flight and things like that. Because I guess in the end of the day, what separates us from commercial television is that we're honest. I know Dennis and Jeb and yourself and myself we'll say what we think. If the flight's rubbish, we'll say it's rubbish. We don't need to worry about the airline coming back to us and going, "Hey, we gave you this free flight. Why weren't you positive?" So actually, that's one thing. I did actually have Zymen Airlines approach me, which I didn't go ahead with what they did. They did appear on another channel who gave glowing reviews of them. So, but they were very upfront in saying, how much do you want us to pay you? So I appreciate their honesty, but that's a bit dodgy, I thought.
Yeah, I've never flown with them. I think they're part of Sky Team, aren't they?
Yeah, Scary Team, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to fly with them. So if they're watching, I
love you guys. You're an amazing airline. I already know already. I will definitely mention the tea thing that they were telling me that I had to mention, how amazing it is.
Well, the answer, obviously, Paul, is VPNs. I keep installing them. I think I have 20 VPNs on my phone, yet they haven't approached me yet for sponsorships.
Yeah. NordVPN, they have a Dashland, I think, as well. They and Skillshare, they do a lot of sort of supporting YouTubers and that type of thing, which I think is really good of them. I haven't taken up any of their offers. I think the problem is my ego is too brittle and sensitive. I imagine there'd be the expectation that if they pay me X amount of money, then they have to get a certain number of views. And if my video bombs like the De Havilland Canada, so I'm blaming you for that, vlog, then only gets 4,000 views, then I'd feel a bit bad that I'm taking money for not providing my end of the bargain. So as well as like this is just a hobby for me. I'm doing it for fun. I'm losing money. That's fine. I don't want to spend too much of the video talking about a sponsor. I do actually have NordVPN, but I don't have those other two things. So NordVPN, I probably wouldn't take them up, but anyway. But it's good that they are sponsoring. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a well-paid job, so I can sort of this can be my hobby on the side. But certainly for people who don't have that or who are trying to do this as their job, then I think it's good of NordVPN and Dashline and those people to be supporting those creators. Yeah, because creators are really good. I mean, there's like, other than just plain videos, there's so many amazing videos on YouTube on like history, politics. I mean, aviation, not as in like trip reports and things, but just here's the SR-71 Blackbird. Let's spend 10 minutes talking about it. Those kind of documentaries, I think, are actually really cool, and they're doing really well. And so it's good that they're being supported by those companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a great side to it. It does get a bit boring to see the same sponsors every time.
Yeah, I just skip ahead. I think lots. I don't tell anyone. I think lots of people do. But yeah, I mean, I know what NordVPN is anyway. But
yeah. You already mentioned the museum in Wollongong a little bit. I want to share a quick clip here, and then I want to talk about the museum because I think it's a pretty cool thing. I'm gonna share the screen with you. Can you confirm if you can see it? Excellent.
Yes. Yep.
Most of the tour was taken by Ron, a former Qantas engineer who worked on VHOJA when she was still flying.
It's nice and windy there.
Yeah. Airport of Victoria. My dad, by the way.
Oh wow. All right, I'll stop it here. If you want to watch the entire video, you can do that on Paul's channel. It's a very, very interesting video. That 747, Paul, how did it end up in Wollongong?
Got lost. No, really. So that's the first Qantas Boeing 747-400 that was ever delivered to Qantas. It broke records when it flew nonstop from London to Sydney a number of decades ago. They actually they took it out onto the runway and then they turned the engines on and then took off immediately. So they used a tractor to drag it out there to make the whole distance to Sydney. Obviously, it had no passengers and nothing inside it other than fuel and then a few of the crew. So that obviously flew with Qantas for a number of decades, and then it was retired to the Haas Aviation Museum, which is at the Albion Park or Wollongong or Shell Harbour. They change the name regularly. Airport. And there it's on display there. So everything I did in that video, anyone can do if you do the tour there. It's a fantastic aviation museum. They've got, I mean, having a 747 there is amazing, but also, and almost more uniquely, they've got a Super Constellation there, which actually still flies. It's the only airworthy Super Constellation still flying. So sometimes I'll be sitting here and I'll see a Super Constellation fly out the window, which is amazing. There was one, I think, there was one in Switzerland, I think, but it's grounded due to issues. So they've got that as well as many other amazing aircraft. They've got F-17, no, not F-117, that'd be cool. F-111, although that's not flying. They've just got a MiG recently. But it's a really good museum. I'm hoping to redo that video that you've just shown me then. I think I did that in 2017. So I've got much better camera gear now. So I'm hoping to redo that actually in the near future. I was hoping to have it done for this Qantas 747 retirement, but obviously that's happened a bit earlier than planned. But yeah, so it's an amazing museum. And so having done the longest flight on a 747 a few years ago, that the shortest flight on a 747 was just a few minutes, I think. Over, I don't know, like 50 or so kilometers from Sydney Airport, just down here. So it's 7:47 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Thousands of people from Wollongong were all around the airport, and we all saw it land there, which is very cool to see. So the runway was just long enough to land on, but I don't believe it's long enough to ever take off. So the plane's trapped. But it's a fantastic museum piece there. It's well looked after by a lot of volunteers, a lot of whom are sort of ex-airlines. So yeah, it's really cool to see that there and being preserved. The other 747 in Australia is out Longreach, which is a fantastic museum out there. The only issue is Longreach is in this desert. You've got to fly there in a Dash 8 for over like an hour or two from Brisbane. So, but I mean, I've been there. I'm hoping to go back there again later this year. But yeah, it's a fantastic museum. It'd be one of the best aviation museums in Australia. But also significantly, it's like an active museum because a lot of the aircraft are still airworthy. And again, seeing a Super Constellation fly is just amazing. We're very lucky to have one still left flying, let alone in my hometown, 20 kilometers over there, 26 kilometers, I think it is.
Are the seats,
very cool.
Are they sell tickets to fly on Connie? Can you
No.
get? Okay.
Yeah, no. I've asked and begged and offered to sell children that I don't have and things like that. They're my children. um, and I'll name them after them. My first child can be called Haas if that's what they want. But no, I think purely from a legal issue. I think unfortunately these keeping these aircraft flying is becoming much more difficult. I think there was a B-17 in the US that crashed. No, exactly. Expensive, but also expensive to do properly. So I think that B-17, I think there actually were corners being cut. And that could well have been a factor in the crash. And I think people died. So because of incidents like that, then it's much more difficult, as it kind of should be, I guess. Because I guess safety is the most important thing. And again, if you're in a super constellation, like if something goes wrong, that's a very big aircraft to land on things. So I guess you've got to think about all those different things. They take safety there very seriously. I mean, it's kind of it's an Australian thing and a Qantas thing. I think that's why they've been so successful from a safety perspective. Like on one hand, we're usually happy for a laugh and be a bit silly. But on the other hand, when it comes to things like this, there's no jokes. We're very serious. If you don't cut corners, if you can't afford the right part, the plane's grounded. And that's one thing I appreciate with Qantas. I think you know that if something goes wrong, they would do what's the worst thing possible for the company. So, for example, in fact, I think the books behind me, there was a Qantas A330 that had mechanical issues over in the Australian outback. So either A, they fly back to the nearest major city where there's other planes, there's hotels, there's Qantas engineering, much better outcome for the airline, or B, they land in the middle of nowhere, which is the safest thing to do. So they land in the middle of nowhere, which is the safest thing to do, and then deal with the consequences of that. But so it's just that this, like, they take safety very seriously, and me as a passenger, I appreciate that. I'll always feel a lot safer on a Qantas jet than like a lot of other airlines. I don't really have a do not fly list, but I have a few that I'm nervous to fly.
It doesn't rhyme with Petstar?
No, well, see, that's a Jetstar probably actually for a low-cost carrier. I think because they just use Qantas engineering, they're probably actually not too bad.
Yeah.
Tiger, the other Australian low-cost carrier, they did run into issues with our regulation board a few years ago. I don't know what it was about, but I'm happy to spread gossip about them.
The museum, though, I have never seen a tour through an aircraft that thorough. I think that is unique to Wollongong.
Yeah.
You can literally crawl into any single corner you can in the aircraft. I don't think usually they close everything off and you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
No, absolutely. Because even at in Seattle, they've got the very first 747 there, and I've got a video on that as well. But I mean, the whole upper deck and flight deck is just blocked off for whatever reason. But no, absolutely, it really is one of the best tours, and also significantly, obviously, the fact that you can climb into everything. If we followed that guy up that door near the landing gear, but all the equipment in the cockpit's all turned on, so you can actually fiddle with. You can set the autopilot to things. You can play with the engines and stuff like that. We didn't touch the landing gear because we weren't sure if that was connected or not. We assumed it probably wasn't, but no one wanted to take the risk. But I think that was really cool. And that was one of the things I did in the video. I had like a retired Cathay Pacific 747 captain next to me, kind of running through scenarios. It was incredible fun. But yeah, it's a really good tour. And yeah, I hope to redo that video again with better cameras and things like that in coming months. But it's genuinely one of the best, I think, plane tours, 747 tours in the world. It was a fun day, and that's sort of they modify it depending upon your interests. So, because obviously some people do it, they don't really care about planes. They're just like, this is a big plane, that's a bit different, cool. Let's do this. We'll crawl around it for an hour. But I was there, I think it was about 6 hours for us. And they said at the start, if you're interested, we'll go all day. And we were, so we did. So again, they're all volunteers, they're all av geeks, retired captains, engineers, flight attendants, everything. It's really good. The Haas Aviation Museum in Wollongong was a plug.
Indeed, I wanted to ask, always be plug-in?
That's it. But book ahead. You need to organize days in advance. You can't turn up and just do the 747 tour. You can do a tour at the museum on the day, but the 747 tour, and it was a wing walk. Well, that book's out. The other thing as well is actually John Travolta's 707 is coming there next year as well. So they're going to have that lined up there next to the 747. So that'll be amazing.
Are they going to keep that airworthy?
I don't know. I've heard conflicting rumors. Some people have said yes, which to me seems impossible. I mean, it would be amazing to see a 707. I will definitely be there when it lands. But I think keeping a 707 would be very difficult. And even just to take off from that airport, I'm not sure if it would actually be able to. So the people that are saying it's going to be kept airworthy, they may have no idea what they're talking about. But to me, just my gut instinct would think it's surely not. But it would be amazing if they did. Because yeah, I've never seen a 707 flying. That would be incredible.
How much is the 747 tour?
I don't know, a few $100, I think. Potentially. I don't know. I'll Google it. Hang on one sec.
Probably not expensive enough for the value you get.
Definitely for what you're getting. Oh, hang on. No, I think it's 195. So that's less than what I was.
It's about $100 US.
Yeah. Yeah. Although actually that's from 2015, so I assume that's potentially still up to date. But yeah. No, I mean for what you're getting, I mean it's like a sim session for half an hour will be $1,000. I mean, obviously it's not a simulator, it's real, but I've got like a proper retired captain running me through scenarios. Is very cool. So if they for what you're paying, it's amazing value.
If they put you on a 747 flight deck now, they can completely trust you to put the thing on the ground. If it's still fun,
it's fine, yeah. No, I used to play Microsoft Flight Simulator 2000 back when 15 years ago. So it's something about the forward arrow, and then at some stage you land.
Exactly. Going on to actually the retirement of the 747, it's been a big thing with KLM. Obviously, KLM is an airline close to my heart, with the 747 as well. Qantas did the retirement a little better in my eyes than how KLM have done it, because you got to fly on the very last commercial flight.
Yeah.
Of which I want to show a quick clip here. Can you confirm if you can see the screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's watch a couple seconds here.
30 days, I'll select a winner and mail it out. I really can't emphasize how fortunate I felt to get these tickets. In fact, everyone I spoke to felt really lucky. So I'm very happy to share some of the memorabilia with another AvGeek out there. There was a speech from John Gissing representing the airline.
The last flight of the 747, that must be like such an incredible special thing to be on. How was it?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I guess you made the reference to KLM's, I guess, farewell, and even BA's farewell as well. So, I mean, I guess because, again, going back to the previous topic, because we have closed the borders and essentially kept the virus mostly out, we're able to do these types of things. I mean, BA and KL, I mean, actually, I don't know how things are in Holland or Amsterdam or Netherlands or Dutchland. Is that the same country? I'm not really sure. That place. No one knows. Good. So that place, I don't actually know if the virus is pretty much there, but obviously BA couldn't do anything because the virus is everywhere in the UK now. And obviously they'd be opening themselves up to be sued and things like that if someone caught it on that flight. So it's an absolute tragedy what happened with BA, because I mean, the BA 747 is also iconic. But I'm glad to hear more recently that they are actually keeping some of those aircraft in museums. But no, I was very fortunate to get on the last 747 flight. So they ran 3 flights: Brisbane, Sydney, and Canberra. Canberra was the last of the 3. The tickets, I think all of them sold out in about 13 minutes. Again, they were doing social distancing and economy, so there were less seats available. But I had heard rumors in the days leading up to it that this was going to happen. So I was very nervous that I'd get on the flight, because I definitely wanted to get on the flight. But it was a really good day. I'm glad that Qantas did it. I wonder if they could have had more of these farewell flights. I think there was certainly a lot of demand. There were a lot of people didn't get tickets, and I really feel sorry for them. A lot of friends who are massive Qantas and aviation geeks tried, but just couldn't get tickets. So that's why I was very, very keen to do a video, and the video was much longer than most of mine, and I included extra stuff which I usually wouldn't, just to like sort of like the captain's speech, the speech from the customer service manager, things like that, just to kind of take more people along the journey. A lot of people would have seen this video who wouldn't normally look at these types of videos. They'd be sort of just people who just have memories of the 747 the first time they went overseas. It's really an iconic aircraft, and I think particularly for Australia as well, because we're so isolated, it was a Qantas 747 that took so many people overseas for the first time ever. But it was very well done. It was fun to do it with Dennis as well. Sometimes when we, like, you can probably relate to this as well, when we do these vlogs and travel and stuff, it's just us. So it's just kind of us and social media or whatever. Got no one else to talk to other than often flight attendants and things like that. It was actually fun to be there with another av geek, and also just like we can sort of understand about like the pressures of filming things. You've got to get the right angle of things. How we all feel ridiculous standing there in public, just talking at our hand, which for me was one thing that took me years to build up the courage to do and actually talk to the camera. So yeah, I was just really honored to have got on board that flight and been able to make a video. And it was very sad. And even now, like the other day, I don't know what I was doing. I felt particularly sentimental. So I was watching a few of that video and Dennis's and a few others of just footage from the airport of the plane taking off for the last time. There's some fantastic footage on YouTube, particularly when it left Brisbane and Canberra after these flights. Actually, both flights, the plane left at sunset. So it's just, you've got this like 747 taking off literally into the sunset. I'm just like, it's very sad. But I guess that's progress. I mean, I think Dennis said when he was talking to you as well, and the 747 is great to look at, but it's not good to fly. And the A380 looks terrible, but it's objectively from a comfort perspective, it's much better. Same with the 787 with its terrible windows, and A350 with normal window shades. They're far more comfortable to fly in. But the 747 is still special, and very lucky to have got on that flight.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It is always great to get on a 747, but then if you have an 11-hour flight in coach, it is not very comfortable. And like my longest flight with KLM was with the 747 to San Francisco on a 747. Fantastic. But it's a long way with on an old seat with an old screen. Yeah. But the best entertainment is still out the window. Yeah. If you're not flying a 787.
Yeah. No. I can completely agree with you. Yeah. I remember I think one of my first flights in the Qantas 747 was to Johannesburg. It's like 15 hours or thereabouts. But yeah, just even the dryness of the air. Like I was getting nosebleeds for no reason. Definitely wasn't picking my nose. Just want to clarify that point. But yeah, just from the dryness, and even now you notice it. I went to the US last year, the year before, and half the trip was 777s, and the other half was in 787s. And just even in the 777, you notice it's noticeably drier, the air, and sort of irritates my delicate skin and nose.
They have no business here, Paul. With the temperatures and the humidity here, you're not gonna survive.
In Canada, or wherever you
like, I have last week we had the temperature drop to -14. Wow. And then the humidity drops to 100% in my apartment. So I have a humidifier running all day just to try to keep it up to at least have it be livable. But
yeah. Well, I mean, here it's stormy and there's lightning and thunder, but it's about 24 degrees. So it's quite nice, actually. I don't know what the number of humidity is, but it's pleasant. It's a pleasant temperature here. That's why I keep telling Dennis to move over here, because it's such a nice part of the world. We don't have those extremes. It sounds like you have. Like, the coldest we will get, it gets to 10 degrees, and we're all having a crisis. We can't cope. So like I've never been at numbers that like -14. I wouldn't know what to do.
Well, do you know how cold it gets? The coldest it gets here minus
Minus
40.
30.
40.
Wow.
Yeah.
It'd just be incomprehensible. Sometimes, yeah, no, that I wouldn't. I mean, it'd be interesting to do it just as a novelty, but probably not to live there. Ugh.
It was novel the first year, still the second year. This is my third winter here. I think this year I'm gonna hate it like the rest of the Canadians.
Just move to Wollongong. It's much nicer.
I know, right? I want
We
to
have
quickly.
a 747-400 just over there.
That's
You
right.
come look at that.
I want to quickly watch another clip from a flight you had last year. That was the flight you flew from DC where you met Jeb Brooks. I don't want to talk about the Jeb Brooks part, but rather the flight itself, because it wasn't your favorite flight. Let's watch a couple seconds here. Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Excellent.
After that, I continued watching Game of Thrones, only to have the person in front of me recline, and because of the design of the seat, it bent and broke my computer's screen. Now, I wasn't really sure who was at fault in this situation. The guy in front was apologetic, and he was well within his right to recline his seat. So maybe it's a flaw in the seat design, so would American take the blame? Or maybe it was my fault for putting the laptop on the tray table, which to me seems like a perfectly normal thing to do. As I said, the guy in front was apologetic and felt terrible, so I wasn't going to demand any compensation from him. Thankfully, I had travel insurance, so they covered the $1,100 repair bill from Apple, except for a $250 excess.
I think lesson here for viewers who don't have travel insurance. Get travel insurance.
Never watch the final season of Game of Thrones because it was so disappointing. Such an amazing series to build up this complex story and then just be like, let's just kill everyone and terrible. I don't know how they were able to destroy such an amazing series. Don't know what they were thinking.
I've never watched it, so I'm not missing.
Don't bother now. No,
Exactly.
You're not. It's genuinely wrecked because of the last season. I always told myself once it's all finished, I'm going to then start and go through again. But now I'm still angry years afterwards. It's terrible. It wrecked that trip going to the United States.
But you also wrecked your computer, and another couple of things went totally disastrous.
Yeah.
Because you were planned to fly on a not to be named aircraft, because apparently it demonetizes the channel.
Oh, really? Didn't know that.
DJ's Aviation has that issue that pretty much every time he talks about that 737, he gets demonetized. So
you just mentioned it, or don't say the M word.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
That's
737.
Yes, that's 737.
Yeah.
What else went wrong?
Yeah. The computer smashed, which was bad. Exactly, you're right about travel insurance. In fact, I was just talking to a friend last night, and one of his friends broke his leg in the US with no travel insurance. He was an Australian, and it was a disaster. I think he got some emergency treatment and then was given a box of painkillers and flew back to Australia, which 15 hours in economy with a broken leg. And I think several years later now he's still dealing with the consequences. It wasn't fixed at the time. And I think he's still being chased to pay the bills in the US, which is a bit mischievous on his behalf. So definitely get travel insurance. If you can't afford travel insurance, you can't afford to travel. There's stories in Australia. A lot of Australians like to go to Bali and ride motorbikes without helmets and fall off and hurt themselves. You definitely need to get travel insurance.
I mean, travel insurance doesn't fix stupidity.
No, exactly. You're right. It doesn't, but it just makes it less expensive. But particularly in the United States, where I don't know if Australia has a reciprocal health agreement with Canada or not. I know we do with New Zealand and UK, so we might. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
But certainly, if we go to the US, then we're just paying for everything. So that's certainly something. But yeah, it was an interesting incident. What happened with this computer being smashed? I didn't really know what to do. I emailed American Airlines. They sent an apology and nothing else, but I don't really know what they would do anyway. I still don't know really who's at fault. I never put a laptop on the tray table. I still think it's probably a bit of a design flaw that it would, like, the tray table stays still, but then the seat which it's attached to kind of collapses in on it.
It's that 15-inch MacBook, right?
Or 13. I'm not sure. Hang on. 15, you're right. Yes, yep.
Yeah. Because I have a 15-inch MacBook, and I'm so scared to have it open on an aircraft, because for that exact reason.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, like, a lot of people put their laptops out when they're sitting in their seats, so it'd actually be interesting to see how often this type of thing actually happens. But anyway, I'm just glad I had the travel insurance, and that was all very straightforward. They didn't really want much other than just the receipt from the computer repair store. So that was fine. So it could have been much worse. So yeah. Oh well. But yeah, so the flight was meant to be in the aforementioned non-mentionable aircraft. So that would have been an experience. So I think 3 days beforehand it was grounded, so we ended up going on just a standard 737-800. But we were just lucky to have still, like, the flight was delayed by a few hours, I think, as well. So really, I mean, everything went wrong with that flight, really. But at the end of the day, we got to Los Angeles and went to Disneyland the next day, which was exciting. And Universal Studios, which was actually more exciting. That was quite fun, actually.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a long flight though. From DC to LA.
Well, exactly. So that's in Australia. Like, I know we're a big country, but the reality is 99% of us spend 99% of the time between sort of along the East Coast. We might, like, Adelaide would be sort of the furthest we go across that way. But otherwise, everything's within an hour. Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, everything's Canberra. All those, most flights are an hour. So so for it to be, I think it was like just under 3 hours or thereabouts. It's actually quite a long flight. But yeah, it was got a nice sunset, I suppose. But certainly flying is much cheaper in the US. That's one thing that we noticed when we go over there. Flying is very expensive in Australia. I think the airlines have a bit of a monopoly here. And unfortunately here, the number 2 airline, Virgin Australia, they've gone into administration at the moment. So they're trying to work out what to do. And as much as I like Qantas, I know that if there's no competition, they will charge us a lot. Like a 1,000-kilometer flight between Sydney and Melbourne that will last an hour. Like, it's quite normal for that to cost $200-300 one way. In the United States, that would get you a lot further. And business class in Australia, I mean, we talk about how, like, hopeless intra-Europe business class is, sort of Club Europe and things like that. And sure, domestic business class in Australia is much better, but it'd be 3-4 times the price. I mean, it'd be literally $1,000, which is, I don't know, what, $700 for a 1 hour flight in business in Australia. It's crazy that anyone pays those types of figures for business class domestically in Australia, but they seem to.
I would, like, in Europe, I would never pay the price they charge for an intra-Europe business class ticket. The only ever time I've flown business class on, like, Eurobiz is when it's part of a long haul itinerary.
Yep.
But here in Canada, like, we have Air Canada, which is like the flag carrier, and then WestJet, which is the other large airline, and that's all we have. And prices are extremely expensive.
Yeah.
It was cheaper for me in September to fly to Europe than it was to fly to Toronto from here, which is a 3-hour flight, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. It's exactly right. There's no competition, so they can do whatever they want. And flying generally in Australia is a lot. If I fly from Sydney to London, it will cost quite a bit more than if I'm flying in the opposite direction, but a return trip, purely because they know that they can charge Australians a lot and we'll pay it anyway. Business class can be like almost half if you start in Europe and come this way, even though you're doing the same flights in opposite directions. We're just ripped off here, and you guys potentially are as well.
Exactly. going on to a more modern aircraft, right before the pandemic, you got to fly on an interesting brand new aircraft, of which we can show a bit of a clip here. If you can confirm if you can see it.
Yep.
There you go.
This is the first A350 operating in the Oceania region, and they plan to fly them on the Sydney and Los Angeles routes from Nandi. The gate opened and we got on board.
So it sounds like it is a very big deal for them to get the A350, because in the introduction of the video, you said that multiple people were asking you, are you going to fly the new aircraft?
Yeah.
Like, how was it?
Yeah, no. I mean, the aircraft itself was quite good, and it was cool to see how excited the whole country was about it. So I guess a lot of Fiji is that tourism is a major factor, and they have some sort of exports of sort of like fish and things like that. So that's another advantage of the A350 is I think it has a lot of storage holds. So I think they're also very keen to even get onto the Trans-Pacific route between the US and Canada, US and Australia, which is very, very profitable. Hence why even now there's a lot of airlines flying across it, yet prices are still very expensive until obviously what's happened now. So I think they were keen to get into that market, and by having a decent aircraft, the A350, then they're able to do that. Beforehand, they had the A330, which was adequate at best. They've also upgraded their the lounge in Nandi, the main international airport there as well, which is pretty good, as was in the video. So, I mean, there were some issues on the flight. The service was not great, and the airline actually contacted me afterwards to sort of get sort of feedback, and I was happy to give reasonably detailed feedback so they can improve things. So that was good that they got it in touch and things like that. Because I mean, that's the thing. I'm always feel a bit uncomfortable about being negative, because like you don't know, people are having bad days and things like that. On the other hand, though, is like you are paying a lot for a service, and you should be getting it. It is no excuse. So and I know the airline wants to do the best job possible, and they need to know. I think all bosses would like to know if some of their employees are doing something wrong. So I was happy to give that feedback, but also you do feel a bit uncomfortable criticizing an airline, because you know the criticism could get back to the managers of those employees. But also, like, I have an obligation to be honest as well. Again, I'm not being paid to do all these types of things. People are watching them to get an honest view of what it would be like to fly with Fiji Airways in business class. So, but it was a fun. I flew to Fiji for a long weekend. I spent most of it flying and then just flew back. So. It was fun though, and actually what was cool actually, the captain of the A330 across messaged me on Instagram and said, "Oh, I was your captain." So that was kind of cool. It's always cool getting contact from the crews and on the flight deck as well as on board and things like that. So no, it was good. Everyone was very excited. All the people in the streets were talking about this new A350 that Fiji Airways had. So no, it was good. It was fun to be a part of the day after the inaugural flight.
Well, you say you got messaged by the captain. Like, would you say you get recognized on flights?
Yeah, it's happened now, which is always it's a novelty when it happens. I've had quite a few Qantas flight attendants recognize me. I'm not sure if it might say on my profile that I do this as well potentially. But yeah, I've had a few of them come up and say hello. So that's always cool. Because I do like enjoy working with the flight attendants. I mean, I'm sure this is something you've thought about as well. Just there's always a part of you that's a bit uncomfortable filming and critiquing them. I mean, again, what we're doing, I think, is legitimate. We're reviewing a product that we're paying for, but also you don't want to get anyone in trouble. You don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. So actually, in a slight tangent here, with one of those Fiji videos, clearly there was another person on one of the planes who did not want to be filmed. They were just, whenever I was like in their direction, they were like diving out of the view. So I don't know, maybe if they're like, they work for the CIA, or if they're meant to be on work, or they're sick or something, rather than they don't want to be seen. So I just put a lot of effort into making sure I was editing out her face, and fair enough, because I actually think that is an issue which I think all of us face that do this, is filming other passengers' faces. I mean, I'm uncomfortable filming the crew's faces. The reality is sometimes they're included as it is, but other passengers, I think we should be really careful not to film them. without their permission, which presumably we're not getting. So I don't know where I was going with this story, but other than, yeah, I definitely, I think there's going to be issues actually in coming years with YouTubers doing what we're doing and then filming other people. What was I talking about?
Whether you were recognized, but by
oh yeah, that. Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
lost the train of thoughts.
Flight attendants and things like that. So that's happened, and at airports and things like that. And at like the final 747 flight, quite a few people came up. That was specifically an AvGeek flight. So that's always cool. Like I remember, I think it's either Jeb or Dennis said in one of their videos how like people come up to us and they're sort of there. They don't want to feel like they're a burden on us or anything like that. But we are so excited to be recognized. For us, it's a novelty again that we've done this. We're making these ridiculous nerdy videos, and people like them enough to actually come up and comment on them. I think we're all flattered. Like we've stumbled onto this accidentally. It's really flattering. I had a father email me and said both him and his son are going to be at an air show that I was going to be at. It's the son's birthday. I know you probably get requests like this all the time, but do you mind coming and saying hello to my son? And I'm like, literally, you're the first person who's requested that, and I'd be flattered too.
Exactly. I've had a similar thing where a mom approached me because apparently her 5-year-old watched my videos and really liked it, and she asked me to send a birthday message, also saying like, you probably get this all the time. I don't, but I'm very flattered.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think it's very flattering that people watch our nerdy videos. I think it's very cool. And this is the cool thing about YouTube and sort of the whole creator community. We can do these types of things and we don't have to watch what is on free to air TV now. We can, which most of it is. I mean, there's a reason people don't watch it anymore. So we can find what our interests are, make our own videos, and just sort of and watch entertaining content or make our own and sort of become friends and communicate with other members of, I guess, the AvGeek community. And that's a cool thing. I've obviously met you. I've met Paul, met Noel. I've caught up. I've met Dennis a few times, Jeb a few times. When I was in DC, Jeb came and gave me a tour of the place. Jeb's been here. Dennis has been here as well. We took him on the 747 the day after the final 747 flight. So I think that's really cool what we have, this just nerdy AvGeek community. I think it's a really good thing. And even like a lot of the people who comment on our videos, they comment on all of them. So they watch all of us together. And it's just a nice sense of community.
Yeah, actually, that's a great segue into next section. I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTube series Hot Ones.
Hot Ones?
No. It's a YouTube series where celebrities have to do an interview where they have to eat really spicy chicken. We're not going to be eating spicy chicken, don't worry. I don't know how I would be able to get it to you.
Exactly.
But,
yeah.
So something they do there is show some photos of their Instagram account. Something that I want to do with you as well. And a photo that is reasonably contextless. And if you can give some context behind the photo, starting off with the first one here. What is the context behind this photo?
So I was in London for a conference, and I messaged these two guys and said, "Hey, we should catch up." So we did, and then people gave amusing responses saying we all look similar, which I would obviously consider a compliment. I'm sure the other two would as well. So that was fun. We just caught up and spoke about our respective AvGeekery and how my national cricket team is better than theirs. Which they agreed with.
Nice. Next one.
So there's a running disagreement between Jeb and myself, and Dennis Bunnick. So Jeb and myself have created the Boeing 787 Window Shade Haters Association. I'm president, he's deputy vice president, and Dennis likes them. So we I think the size of them is good. You can always get a good view from them. But the biggest issue is that the crew is able to lock them in the dark setting. But not just the dark setting, they can lock them in like just a slightly tinted section. So you don't even really, you can't really tell that they're actually even tinted. It's very slight. So you only know if you're trying to take photos and they don't come out well. So that's my only objection to the 787 windows. The other thing is as well is they don't, particularly back when they came out, they didn't actually go that particularly dark, and I would get sunburnt through them. I have a photo, I think when I flew with BA years ago, where actually my arm was pink on this window side, because even though it was in its darkest setting, I was still getting slightly sunburnt. It's possibly a reflection of me, my genetics, but still, yeah, I just get annoyed when the crew darken them. I know why they do it. I guess it's the saving energy, and if we all go to sleep, then I guess that's easier. But it's annoying that they can block my views, because again, I will spend a long time researching a seat to get a good view out of the wing and the engine and everything else. So to have that view blocked, it's a bit disappointing.
Absolutely. I agree. I am on board with you with 787 Window Haters Club.
You can be the vice deputy joint co-leader, which is with same level as Ajeb, but I'm still the president.
Okay. Sounds about right. And then and the last photo I wanted to share with you. What's going on here?
So Australia has one remaining Fokker 50 route. So I went over to Adelaide to check it out. And I messaged Dennis beforehand, and he said he was there. So we caught up before. Oh no, hang on. This was after the Fokker flight, before my Jetstar flight back to Sydney. So we just caught up in the lounge. Just grabbed lunch together and things like that. So that was fun. But yeah, sometimes now whenever he's over my side of the country, we catch up, and same when I'm over there. So no, it's again, this is like one of the things I enjoy about this whole thing, just the friends that we've made outside of actual making videos. So yeah, so that's in the Qantas lounge at Adelaide Airport. Although actually, I'm not sure if I meant to say this, but there's like a secret lounge at Adelaide Airport as well. So I don't know if you know, but with Qantas, there's like the different status levels, and then above that, there's Chairman's Lounge status, which is like there's no signs out the front of these lounges. It just says private. So it's essentially like senior politicians, senior public servants, and business executives. So we may have got into it then as well, which was a novelty. We won't say how, of course, but so that was fun. So we were very well looked after by the Qantas crew there. And Qantas do often have a lot of great staff working both on the planes and in the airport. So, and again, obviously this is just this tragedy of what's going on at the moment with the whole COVID thing, is that all these people are obviously suffering. So that's why even flying the other day, it was just good just to get back there. It's good to buy tickets, get the economy going, go to the airport, do my routine of buying a magazine, which I don't end up reading. I usually just end up sitting next to the window and watching planes. We're just trying to return things to normality, which I think is all we can do, and keep flying again when safe to do so. So that's fun. So that was fun catching up with Dennis.
Nice, because one of the first video you did after COVID, you went to the airport and you wanted to do your normal routine when you wanted to buy your magazine, but when it was shut, the lounge was shut, and then your most recent video, the lounge was open. What are some of the changes that you've noticed? And do you think they're improvements?
Yeah. So I think the catering actually is an improvement there. So Qantas has 3 lounges at the domestic terminal. There's Qantas Club, Business, and Chairman's Lounge. Again, they've all been closed except for Business, the middle tier one. So everyone gets into there. So I think because of that, it was actually pretty full, which it was just good to see that people are back there again. But the food in the past, it used to just be like you just, all the food's there and you just pick what you want. But now it's all individually plated and you don't go near it. There's staff who reach and pass it to you. So I guess there's just less ways of touching other people's food, which I guess makes sense. But I think actually there were more options than what I remember last time when I was there. So I think from that perspective, it's actually probably improved. But otherwise, things are the same, other than just the usual sort of there's now traffic cones between the entry and exits, just to make sure there's less people walking past each other as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, things aren't normal, but they're more normal than they have been over the last few months, which I think is good, and hopefully that will continue to happen as things start to open up and Victoria gets on top of their spread, which they mostly are now.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see lounges. I've never really been fond of the buffets, and especially now knowing that people might be coughing in the the rice cooker. I think the shakeup that COVID has been doing to the travel industry might actually leave some good marks. I'm not saying that we need to keep COVID. It's absolutely the travel industry is hurting a lot, but airlines mostly have to find different ways to collect revenue, and passenger comfort changes as well. And I think hopefully as well that we can get some more room on an aircraft, not being so tight with other passengers. It might actually have some advantages.
Possibly. I mean, I'm probably generally less optimistic about travel in coming years. I think in part just because airlines are going to be struggling financially so much, in that even if they survive COVID, then there's just going to be a lot of debt, which they're going to have to spend time paying off. I mean, I really think over the last 10 years, like we've almost probably gone through some level of sort of the golden era of travel. I mean, we look back at the 70s where there was lobster and everything, and how amazing things were and how travel now is terrible. But I really don't buy that argument. It was much less safe. Planes were crashing all the time back then. Tickets were way more expensive. I mean, there's a meme on social media where it's like, oh, it's like the 1970s lobster, caviar, champagne. Oh, I wonder what travel is going to be like in 2020. And it's just a picture of like a Coke and a nuts in an economy class seat. I mean, I know it's a joke, but it's a really silly comparison, because like this is a first class seat, which once you like consider inflation, the ticket was probably $20,000 in comparison to an economy class seat that probably costs you $50 or $100. Mm-hmm. So cheap flying is actually much cheaper now. So I think we have a romanticized view of travel 70 years ago. Having said that, though, I think before COVID, I think things were really good. I mean, I think in part because of the Middle Eastern three having, they're all being propped up by their own governments. They don't need to make a profit. And because of that, the product is just amazing. And then that's kind of forced all the legacy carriers, the BA, the American, the Qantas, the Lufthansa, who frankly were lagging, to kind of lift up their game. And then you've got sort of the other ones like Singapore and those guys as well. And they also have to improve things as well. And then also there's now the mainland Chinese airlines, particularly for the Australian to Europe market. You've now got, you had China Eastern, China Southern, Air China, big wide bodies, including A380s flying to many Australian cities. Competing with all these different airlines, the legacy carriers had to really lift their game, which I think we probably saw with BA and the A350 finally catching up.
Finally.
Exactly. Yeah. No, they took this great leap forward a decade or two ago and have literally done nothing since. So that's really positive, because I think BA is an incredibly iconic brand. So I'm glad, like, I don't like the BA bashing. I'm glad to see them coming back, obviously before all this happened. But I mean, even like the A380s. So I think Etihad, like Qatar, their A380s are gone. Etihad have been hinting at things recently, so I'm not sure what we're going to see with them. But I think all these airlines are going to be cutting a lot of the perks. Like Qantas only do first class in the A380. That's not coming back until 2023, 24. So there's going to be no first class until then. So I think I think in the airlines are going to be struggling. They're going to have to try and make money in any way that they can. So I'm not sure. I don't want to be too pessimistic, but I'm not sure how things are going to be. And again, we still really don't know what's going to happen with the virus and vaccines as well. If this is going to go for another year or two, I think Emirates might end up retiring a lot of their A380s. And I think there's just going to be a lot less seats as well. Like, who knows what Qantas are going to do? I mean, the A380s are just like, they're just being stored for the time being. But you worry what might happen. Again, like with Lufthansa retiring their A380s, no one saw that coming. So it makes you worry about what other airlines might do as well if they become financially desperate enough.
Air France has gotten rid of their A380s as well, while they were planning on refurbishing them.
Oh,
so
okay.
That was quite a surprise
absolutely.
as well. So
yeah. What are BA doing? I don't think they've announced a retirement. I think they're stored, but I think they're coming back.
I think so. They'll have to, especially after getting rid of the 747s. I know it's hard to make any predictions. It'll be fun though to look back at this podcast in a year or two to see what we were talking about and what predictions we were making.
Yeah. Hopefully, more my pessimism is misplaced and everything goes back to normal. But we'll see what happens.
Exactly. Paul, I want to move on to questions from viewers. Because as with every episode we do on the podcast, I ask you to send in questions for the guests that we have. And so you've done massively for Paul as well. Thousands upon thousands of... I got a couple questions for you, Paul. Starting off with our first question of the day here from Kevin. Toronto Pearson Air Spotter is asking you, do you miss the Qantas 747 and why?
Yes. I actually, Dennis and myself were discussing this actually just afterwards and saying it's so good to be at Sydney Airport and to see Qantas 747s taxiing, landing, taking off, but not actually be flying them, and then get on board a 787 and fly somewhere else. So they're an amazing, iconic piece of engineering. They look fantastic, and again, I love just watching them taxiing around the airport and taking off and things like that. But they certainly we're getting old inside, and certainly with Qantas, the seats and things like that we're aging. But I just like looking at them, and even now, like I would sometimes drive past the Haas Museum when I'm driving down to the South Coast. It's a bit out of the way just to have a look at it. It's just an amazing piece of engineering. Every time I see it, I'm like, wow, this is so big. How does this fly? It makes you think of what they would have thought about it back in the late 1960s, back when they would have seen it for the first time. And I'm sure a lot of Boeing engineers are a bit concerned about if it would fly as well. And then next minute, 50 years later, it's had an amazing history and effect on international travel and been relatively safe and successful as well.
Exactly. Actually, it came up with a great idea maybe for a more living museum. You know, at Heathrow, they have the robo-tugs, right? What if we just have a 747 model being tugged around the airport the entire day, so we at least have that view?
Yeah, I'd pay to see that. Maybe I should recommend it to Haas potentially. It's the only 400 still in Australia, so.
Next question is from, I don't know how to pronounce this, Dr. Doraemon. Well, it's pretty much the same question. Why do you ask the Queen of the Skies so much? It's the view.
I think it's because of what it represents. It represents, I guess, how it just revolutionized travel. And for me as well, it was one of the first aircraft I flew overseas in. And I particularly the first time I went to the UK, the first time to Italy, the first time to Greece. I had such an amazing time. I still enjoy going to these places now, but it was just such a great journey, and it was how I got there. And then now in the post or into COVID era, it represents back when things were last year, back when we were able to fly and flying, and everything was so much better back then. So I think it's that sentimental thing, as well as just the fact that it's an amazing piece of engineering to look at and watch fly.
Exactly. That's beautifully answered, Paul. Next question is from Lack64, and he's asking, what is his job? And then,
so I'm a doctor, and I work in the mental health area in the public healthcare system in Australia.
Okay. Yeah, and
what
then
keeps me
second question was what kind of doctor are you? Asked by checking aviation.
There is like an aviation subspecialty. Again, it's probably not one that you want to be in now, but yeah, I like airplanes, but I like human behavior as well. So I think yeah, that's why. But I do have friends who work in the aviation medicine area.
Interesting. Also, checking aviation is asking, apart from Dennis Bunnick and Robin, who is your favorite aviation vlogger? Thanks.
I mean, it's getting nervous listing names because you worry about who you'll forget to mention. So I mean, so I part in part like I'd just like say the ones that I met in person as well. So Jeb and Paul and Noel, they're like good videos, but just nice people as well. So I think that's kind of, I'll say, but there's other ones that I watch as well. But yeah, it's an awkward question because you don't want to offend people by not mentioning them accidentally, even though you do watch their stuff and like their stuff. So I'll just mention the people I've met in person.
Or
I know they're nice people.
Or maybe just mention the ones that you just really dislike.
No.
Third question from Checkin' Aviation is, will you film a Pacific Island Hopper series?
I could look into it. That's the one that Jeb's done. I can have a look into it.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, but the reality is Australians won't be able to travel to anywhere where there's Americans for years.
That's a lot of places.
Yeah. The whole COVID thing is this again. There might be like Australian bubbles with New Zealand, maybe even Japan's being discussed, or Singapore, but United States and Europe, I think, will be off limits for Australians for years, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But it'd be interesting to go there though. I'd like to, having seen, speaking about Jeb, I want to go to St. Martin, or whatever it's called, or St. Helena. What's that place down in the middle of that ocean?
By South Africa? There?
Yeah.
Yeah, St. Helena.
Yeah. I'd like to go there. That'd be cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that looks amazing. I think they recently flew in with was it 757?
I think you're right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Next question, you had a little bit of prep time for. And it's also really something we've already discussed already. Bob Murphy is asking, what do you think the aviation industry will look like after the pandemic?
I think it'd be smaller than it is now. I mean, just such a crazy number of aircraft are just being retired. And it's really sad to see as well. Like a lot of new aircraft, Delta's retired all their 777s. They were like reasonably new aircraft, and like they just refurbished them as well. Again, like a Lufthansa retiring all their A380s. So I think that's just really sad, I think. And also, again, like I don't want to be too pessimistic, but like particularly like when I went to Frankfurt Airport for the first time a year or two ago, it was just so cool seeing such a broad range of aircraft. Like it literally, like, because I was just filming it was my first time on the 747-8. So I was filming the Dash 400 and the A340-600, just to kind of talk more broadly about these different types of aircraft. There's so many cool aircraft everywhere at Frankfurt, but unfortunately like we're going to lose all these aircraft types, and really the only one we're going to gain really is 777X, which would be cool to see. But so I think things would be smaller. There potentially be less seats. Look, I mean, in 5-10 years time, it'll probably be back to normal. Mm-hmm. I think there's still a lot of money to be made in aviation. So there will still be a lot of seats and things like that flying around. But I think for a number of years, it's going to be very, very different and smaller. And the really sad thing is as well is a lot of people will retire or retrain into other areas, like flight attendants and crews essentially, and they won't go back to it. So that's sad because they will lose that sort of seniority. Because again, like now, if you're a Qantas A380 pilot, like what do you do for the next 3 years? Particularly if you're younger and you're nowhere near retirement. Like the reality is you're probably just going to retrain in something else rather than just sit around and do nothing for 3-4 years. So that's I guess the sad thing. Having said that though, like it's really cool what's been happening. Qantas have been working with just like bus companies. So on Australian television recently, there was a short video on some Qantas A380 pilots that were driving buses in Sydney. So that was cool that they've been able to transition into a job like that. So that's cool. But I think a lot will just change fields.
Yeah. Sad outlook. It is for sure.
Yeah.
Next question is from a good friend of the show, Blake Edgington, probably well known by you as well. He's asking, as a leading reviewer of all things airborne related, if you could be a bird, which bird would you be?
Eagle.
Why?
I guess I don't think it has many predators, like the bald eagle, because I think they're protected, aren't they, in the US? So it won't be many predators. And I think they're bigger and like, I don't know, you don't want to be like a small bird, like a sparrow or something like that. You want to be like something big and decent and strong. So I think probably like a bald eagle, or peregrine falcon, I suppose. That might be cool. Yeah, one of those bigger ones, but I've always thought it would be cool to be able to fly.
Yeah, absolutely. Blake, as well, for you the question, and then leave in the comments below what kind of bird you would be. And the last question is coming from Jeb Brooks, and I think you can probably guess what the question is.
Which is the best city in the United States?
No, actually not.
Oh, isn't it?
The question
okay.
is, what is the most common way of saying goodbye in the USA?
Well, from what I hear from all the Americans, I know it's farewell, brothers. And there has to be a hashtag in front of it.
Exactly.
I don't know what I was thinking. It
was silly.
It just came out.
It is what it is. And with that, we are moving on to the final part, the dreaded part of the podcast today, because as with every podcast, we challenge the guest with their knowledge of aircraft. And today we also have about 30 pictures lined up for the guest to tell me what kind of aircraft it is. And today it is a bit of a special one because all of the photos are actually taken by yours truly. I'm totally not a spotter or anything, so they're all phone pictures. So that might actually be making it a little harder for you to do the work, Paul. Looking at the leaderboards, currently Quentin Soloviev took first place from Alex Sproglowski in the last episode, and he had 18. So 18 is the number to beat here, Paul. Second place is still Alex Sproglowski with 16. Nick from Soplane has 14. Billy from Goer Travels is fourth place with 13. Jeb Brooks and John from Trizzy Traveling are sharing a fifth place with 12 correct answers. Then following, Julius from Fly Around had 9 in sixth place. And then Blake, New Smith, and Daniel Sander all had 8. Noel Phillips had 5. And Dennis Bonnick is down below on the leaderboard with only 4. That should be...
As long as I beat Dennis, I'll be happy.
Fair enough. Let me get everything ready here. You've seen the episodes with Jep and Dennis, so you have 1 minute to guess as many aircraft as you can. So I'm gonna get a stopwatch here, and I'll share the screen with you.
Not that I'm competitive, but this is very stressful.
Can you, Paul, confirm if you can see the screen here?
Just the logo, yep.
Just the logo, perfect. I'm gonna have pen and paper here to take notes, take the score, and then when you're ready, just let me know, and then we'll start.
Ready.
3, 2, 1.
757.
Yep.
Don't know. Skip. 777.
Yep.
That's a 717.
88.
Is that the same thing?
No.
We'll argue that afterwards. Oh, isn't it? Skip. CRJ something or other. Oh, Bombardier. A350.
Yep.
737.
Yes.
Is that a 717?
Still an 88.
Oh, 88 then, or 717?
717 this time, yes.
Oh, good. It's embarrassing. A220.
Yep.
Embraer 175.
Yep.
A350.
Yes.
I saw the wingtips at the end. Fokker.
Yes, correct. Time. You got 10. That's not too bad. That puts you in 6th place.
That's I bet Dennis. Not that I'm competitive or anything. I'll send him a text message. 1 second.
Well, you have indeed beat Dennis, Noel Phillips, Blake Edgington, Neil Smith, Daniel Sender, and Julius from Fly Around. So I think that is a very good place to be in.
That Fokker at the end, was that a 70 or 100? I couldn't.
Fokker 100.
Okay. The only way that I would tell the difference is the extra exit doors over the wing, but I couldn't see them.
Yeah, that and probably your length.
Yeah. The aero bridge was. Not that I'm complaining, or not that I'm making excuses or anything.
Are they still flying the Fokker in Australia?
There's 70s and 100s. Alliance fly them, and Qantas Link fly them. So actually, Alliance is they're like a regional airline. They're actually buying a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So they're buying a few from Swiss to fly them around. There's a lot of money in sort of like charters into the mines. A lot of sort of people sort of fly in, fly out there after a week of work, then they fly back to the East Coast. So the airlines will just rent the entire plane. So I flew a Fokker 70 just last year, I think it was, which was fun.
Nice. Yeah, I think one of those Fokkers I flew on 2 years ago has gone to Australia as well. It's one of the Helvetic ones that you used to fly for Swiss. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
But anyway, with your score of 10, we've made it to the end of the podcast. And the usual questions I always ask at the end of the podcast is, what did you think?
I'm going to now research the difference between the MD-86 and the 717. they are similar, aren't they?
The 717 is indeed a newer generation of the MD-90, MD-88, and then the DC-9 before that. And the tricky part is that they all look very much alike. And then some of them have some of the 717s have the windows above the cockpit windows, and then some of them don't.
Okay.
So it is always a tricky one. So that's why I put it in.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Nevertheless, great score, Paul.
Thank you. It was fun. That was good.
Yeah, what do you think of the podcast in general?
No, I enjoyed it. It's fun. Fun, just meeting new people. It's the first time I met you, obviously, and talking about our shared interest of av geekery and compare and contrast the MD-86 and 717, which I'm going to be thinking about for the rest of the day.
Because you have an entire day ahead of you. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it was fun. It was good. Thanks for inviting me. I mean, I think it's just like what I was saying before with like kids coming up or adults coming up and saying hello to us. It's genuinely flattering that people like the nerdy things that we do, and it's very cool. It's good. If you're ever in Wollongong or certainly let me know, or Sydney, then let me know. We'll catch up and talk about the MD-86 and 717.
Well, here I think that's a great one. I would love to visit the 747 and the museum, the Haas Museum in Wollongong. I've
got friends there. Definitely, I'll take you there. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Last question. Who would you like to nominate to be a guest on the show?
Well, I feel like the other Paul, the Paul that's, I'm just trying to think of a cricket reference here. The one for,
I wouldn't be able to get it anyways if you're going to use a cricket reference.
All you need to know is the English are rubbish at cricket and Australia is better. I think. I don't actually know. So Paul Lucas.
Paul
Lucas.
Lucas.
He'd be good.
I would love to have Paul Lucas on the show. So if you have his number, feel free to send him a text.
No worries. Cool.
And that's another thing, right? Australians are very proud of their rugby, cricket, and coffee.
I suppose. I mean, I think it's, to be honest, it's more to do with the fact that we just like to tease everyone. In this, yeah. I suppose we do. We actually, considering we're like a nation of convicts, our coffee is probably actually pretty good. And we're reasonably good on the sporting field considering our size. But no, we just essentially like teasing the UK and New Zealand.
Excellent. And Americans.
We're too scared to tease Americans. We'll get too much hate in the comments below. America's a lovely place. They're all wonderful.
Keep doing it, because the jokes in your videos are fantastic. Paul, thank you so much for not only being on the show, but also for your great content that you're posting. Keep doing that. And thank you so much for watching the podcast today. I had a lot of fun making this new episode. So hopefully I'll be seeing you for another episode of the podcast pretty soon, or otherwise for a trip report. Thank you very much, and goodbye.